to see a wall in a
Good morning, everybody.
Yes, good morning, sir.
Okay. So is the audio clear?
Yes, sir, it is clear, sir.
Okay, awesome.
wall in a grain of sand.
good evening to one and all. Elon Musk says, if something is important enough for you, even if the odds are against you, you should still do it. On behalf of our President and CEO, Dr. Srikakol Elia, I would like to welcome you all for today's international webinar. Now, I would like to hand over the session to Mrs. Surbi Sugatan, Assistant Professor, Department of Management, to continue the session ahead. Over to you, Surbi ma'am.
Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar. Thank you for taking time out and being here today. I am Surbhi Akash, host for today's webinar. Today, we are presenting on the topic Culture in International Business, which will be presented by Mr. Mustafa Kubbawala from Sunview College, Ontario, Canada. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. We will be running a live question and answer session at the end of the webinar. You can type your questions into the Zoom chat box or in the YouTube comment section. We will be bringing them up at the end of the presentation. A feedback form link will be shared at the end of the presentation on Zoom chat box and YouTube comment section. Participants filling feedback form will be only getting participation certificate. Now, I would like to hand over the time to Mr. Kishore Kalpala, Registrar, Metas Adventist College, for opening prayer.
Thank you, Surabhi Madam. Shall we all reverently bow down our heads for prayer? Our mighty Father in heaven, we, the working force of Metas Adventist College, pause humbly to seek thy mercies and grace on our international webinar entitled Culture in International Business. Thank you that your presence is with us right now. We submit the entire event into thy loving hands. Pour out the blessings and enhance our skills with the insights we will receive from Mr. Mustafa Kubbawala. Unction thy grace upon all the participants. We pray that you would deepen our knowledge, broaden our thinking, and transform our understanding of what we are about to study. Your infinite blessing would mean the success of this webinar. May we be a living witness of your genuine love through the enactment of the knowledge acquired through this activity. We ask all these mercies in the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Kishore. Now, I will call Mr. Anil Kumar CH, Professor and Head of Department Management, for his address.
Good evening, all of you. It is nice to see each one of you present here for today's webinar. Our today's webinar is titled Culture in International Business, and it is having two important components. One is culture, and the other one is international business. In a globalized world, cultural sensitivity is essential. As more companies grow and the global marketplace becomes more accessible for small businesses, multinational and cross-cultural teams are going to be very, very common. This means that it is crucial more than ever for the businesses to understand the culture of their foreign market if they wish to succeed internationally. So with this kind of a thought process coming into our minds, we realize that this is an apt title and the apt person for taking today's event, for going for today's webinar through our respected resource person, Mustafa ji. We are so happy that Mr. Mustafa Kubbawala could be here with us. We want to welcome you, sir, on behalf of our President and CEO, Dr. Srikakol Elia. We want to extend you a warm and hearty welcome. And I'm sure that your rendition for today's webinar would be a blessing for everybody who is viewing this whole program. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anil Kumar CH. Now, without further ado, I will turn the time over to Ms. Ranjita Bhavik, Assistant Professor, Metas Adventist College, for introducing today's speaker.
With great pride and honor, I, I'm here to introduce our distinguished speaker and resource person for today's international webinar, Mr. Mustafa Kubbawala, who is presently associated with Sunview College as an instructor for their international business and office administration programs since 2017. He is also training IB diploma program students in core areas of business management and economics at one of the most renowned school in Toronto, Town Center Private High School. Talking about his academic qualifications, he has completed his schooling from Metas Adventist School from nursery to grade 12. Then he has completed his Bachelor of Commerce with gold medal from Veer Narmad South Gujarat University, India. He has expertise into varied fields as he had added credentials of Masters of Commerce, MBA in Advertising Management, and MA in English Literature. And he has also successfully completed his professional course of Company Secretary from ICSI. He was a former assistant professor at SBB College of Business Administration, Udna, Surat, and has served as former assistant professor and head of the department for BBA at SDJ International College, Surat. We are very fortunate and blessed that we have such a young, dynamic, vigorous, and eminent personality today among us. And on behalf of Metas Adventist College, Surat, I wholeheartedly welcome you, sir. We all are looking forward to get enlightened by your expert knowledge on culture in international business. The time is all yours, sir.
Thank you, everybody. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, sir. Yes, we can see.
Before I start, I would like to tell you that speaking at an event for Metas, it's not like being invited as a guest. I feel more like coming back to home and speaking at home. So I don't feel like a guest at all today, and it's a privilege to be invited at Metas to share my knowledge with you all. So today I'm going to talk about culture in international business. Before I start, let me tell you what your next 45 minutes is going to be like. This is what I always tell my grads and my colleagues, that whenever you are having a presentation, always let people know what it is going to be like. So first 5 minutes, I'm going to talk about culture and complexities, that what culture is, how it is related to business. Then the next part of my presentation would be about business cultures around the world, where I'll be talking about business cultures in various countries and how you need to take care of their culture when you try to do business with them. And the third part relates to culture's influence at workplace. That would be the last 15 minutes, and that would mark the end of my session, and I'll open platform for question and answers. Okay, let's start with culture and its complexities. Now, when I say culture, or whenever we talk about culture, it's just not about how you get married or what food you eat, right? That's all ancillary and comes later. But when we talk about culture, it's all about knowledge, experiences, shared values, beliefs, attitudes, religion, art, symbols, and possessions acquired by a group of people over time. Let's say Indian culture. So it's not about Indian food and wearing a sari or maybe wearing a dhoti. That's not Indian culture. It's all about knowledge, experience, beliefs. And these knowledge, experiences, beliefs that we possess, right, are passed on from generations to generation. That's how cultures are developed. Now, it's not necessary that a culture remains same when it is passed on from one generation to another generation, right? It sometimes gets exposed, right? It sometimes gets exposed to something unique or something different. And all those values and attitudes and beliefs and art, all those things gets added to the existing body of culture, right? Now, and that leads to change in norms and ideologies. I hope you understand the meaning of the word ideologies. Now, ideologies include the thinking perspective. That is all included in ideologies. Now, oops. So that's about culture. Now, in every culture, there is a subculture, right? Um, so it's basically subculture is like a small group within a bigger group, right? So in a big classroom, there is a small group who would be, you can say, they would be all extremely talented and would be extremely inclined towards, say, art and dances. There will be a group that would be extremely inclined towards, say, academics. There would be a group who would always remain absent, right? So we face a different type, when we face different type of students or different type of groups within a classroom. Same is the case with culture, right? So within a culture, within a bigger, within a, with in a bigger scenario, there are small groups, right? And these small groups are distinguished, or you can say differentiated, on the basis of class, ethnic background, religion, or lifestyle, right? Now these small groups or people in these small groups, they are unified. They come together. Why? Because they have shared values. So for example, all those people, like say in Canada, right? Usually people from India, people of Indian origin, they hang out together, right? People of Greek origin, they hang out together, right? We have different religion beliefs. So people go to different churches, people go to different mosques, right? So these small groups are unified by shared beliefs and interests. Like if you further going into Canadian culture, so it's like a mosaic, right? So small tiles of different cultures, when they're put together, it forms a mosaic of a huge Canadian culture. So subcultures together, they form a unique big culture. Like for example, as I've stated on my slide, in the year in the year 2016, more than 7.7 million people that they had a mother tongue in Canada apart from English. Imagine everybody who lives in Canada can speak English, more or less. But then out of the entire population, 7.7 million people reported that they had their own mother tongue. Okay, now that's subculture. Counterculture. This is my favorite group, if you ask me. Now, counterculture means these are the groups, right? They want to oppose culture because they don't like the way culture takes over everything, or you can say the way the culture that is existing and how it takes over stuff in the country, they're not happy with it. So they try to oppose and they form a counterculture. So they're basically, you can say, opposers, right? Or you can say people who are going against the mainstream values and attitudes. Like for example, if I have to state, in North America, you see a lot of street art, right? You see a different type of music like punk music. So all these things are done in order to oppose the existing mainstream culture because they're not happy with it. And that also brings me to a question: what is xenophobia? Now, xenophobia is fear of being taken over. Say for example, um, I believe that um, Indians, technically, or you can say relatively, if you compare with the rest of the world, Indians and Chinese are good at math. For example, when it comes to numbers, we are a lot more powerful than what you see people from other countries do. Now, a lot of Canadians, they feel that our first or our top level jobs would be one fine day be taken over by Indians and Chinese. So they have a fear, right? They have a fear, and sometimes that fear becomes visible, right? In the form of racist comments, right? So that's xenophobia. They don't like it. Not everybody. And when, for example, if you visit the Western culture, all, especially people from India, they go through this stage. Why? Because of xenophobia, fear of being taken over, right? So xenophobia is also a part of counterculture. So that's about culture and its complexities. Now, let's say business cultures around the world. Now, what is the objective of me talking about business cultures around the world? So we are living in a globalized world, right? Now, entire globe is one family. Doing business with another country is nothing special. Everybody has to do that, right? You have to expand your market, right? You have to enter different market segments in order to expand your business. It's very common and natural for a business to do that these days. So it's really important that we understand cultures of various countries while we're trying to do business with them, right? Otherwise, if you don't understand, imagine the disaster it would be. It can bomb, your business can bomb. That's why it's extremely essential that you understand the business, I mean, you understand the culture of a country with whom you are going to do a business or you're planning to do a business. So I have selected some countries which are hotspot for doing business and where doing business is relatively easier than rest of the world. So the first country I have selected is, oh, yeah, I've already spoken about cultural intelligence because we're in a globalized world and we need to adapt and relate to the culture of a country in which we are going to do the business. That helps us to work effectively. And the first country that I have chosen is Mexico, otherwise, locally it is known as Mexico. Now, Mexico is an amazing place. If you meet Mexicans, they will make your day, right? They are so lighthearted. They are amazing, amazing, amazing people, right? Now, when you're doing business, right? So the very important thing that you need to note is that they think business is something personal. Business is something personal. And if you have personal relationship with them, personally in the sense, like if you're their friends, if you're doing business with them regularly, and if they are, you can say, inclined towards doing business with you, then they will choose you first over somebody else because for them, business is personal. Relationship is the key. Now, they believe in a hierarchy. They have set organization structures and they follow a hierarchy. There is a decision-making hierarchy. Now, they have a decision-making hierarchy, like for example, they have directors, then they have senior managers, then they have supervisors, then workers and stuff like that. Now, since they have a hierarchy, they follow a structure, they always believe in leading and instructing their subordinates. They will not take initiatives until and unless you tell them to do, they wouldn't do it. Why? Because they have a structure. Until and unless their boss tells them to do something, they wouldn't do it. They will not take initiatives. During meetings, they don't like being criticized openly. Again, the reason is they have a structure. In a set structure, you cannot criticize somebody openly because there will be a set of people who would be superior to you. There would be a set of people who would be inferior to you, right? The president might be sitting, the CEO might be sitting. You cannot openly criticize anybody during a meeting. But then they have flexible meeting times. Meetings can start late, they can finish late, they can finish early. They don't have to necessarily follow agendas, right? Which is quite different from the other North American countries like US and Canada. Meetings start sharp on time and finish sharp on time, right? I'll be talking about Canadian culture and US culture in the future slides. Emotions can be expressed. They express themselves, but again, there is a thin line of difference between criticizing and expressing yourself. Now, when you express yourself in Mexican culture, it proves that you're engaged during a meeting and it shows your commitment towards the organization, right? Because you're open enough to share what you think. Usually English is their language, but if you hire a Spanish translator while you're doing business with them, then it works like a charm, right? Everybody likes to speak in their own language. Imagine me meeting a Gujarati in Toronto, right? It makes my day. So you always like to speak your own language. So English is widely used, but then if you hire a Spanish translator, it works like a charm. Then formal education titles like doctor, engineer, all these titles are common. You have to address people with their titles. If not, they would feel offended. Now, when they talk, people stand a bit closer to each other, right? Again, because business is considered to be personal, right? And since they believe in maintaining relationship, they try to stand close to each other while they're talking to each other. So that marks some personal touch. If not, they would feel that if you're standing really far, they would feel that you are an unfriendly person and they wouldn't like to do business with you. Then appearance, how you dress, wear a jacket, wear a tie, wear business casuals, appearance matter. And this is what I love the most. They start their lunch break at 2 and their lunch break is 2 hours long. Imagine having a lunch break that's 2 hour long. I would love working in Mexico. Imagine. So 2 to 4, you are off and you come back to work. So that's just amazing. Lovely. Okay, Brazil. Now, Brazil is also, you can say, a hotspot open towards international business. That's why I've chosen it as my second country. Because these are developing North America, I mean, these are developing American countries, right? Again, you stand close to the person you're talking to in Brazil as well. Handshakes are common, right? If you know them personally, they hug you, greet you. And if it is your second or third meet, they would also give you 1 or 2 kisses on your cheek. That's extremely common. That's fine for them, right? But then again, just the way we understand their culture, they also understand Indian culture, and they would not try to kiss you because that's nowhere close to our culture, right? So just the way we have cultural awareness, they also have some sort of cultural awareness. But then if they kiss you on your cheek because they find you friendly, it's fine. They speak Portuguese. Again, just like Mexico, English is widely used, but if you hire a translator, then again, it works like a charm. Then business cards, brochures, all those things should be in Portuguese. Managers, again, they direct and instruct. You need to give clear instructions because just like Mexico, they have a complex corporate structure. And then they clearly distinguish between an influencer and a decision maker. Person who actually influences and decision maker would be identified that this is the person who is an influencer and this is the person who makes a decision, right? There is a separate king and a kingmaker, and that could be easily identified in Brazilian culture. Relationship is the key. Business is again always personal. So business is considered personal. It's like, when we study the definition of sole proprietorship, the proprietor himself is the business. So similar is the case with Brazil. The person who is doing the business, he himself is the business and takes it extremely personal. Meetings are quite informal and relaxed. People are just chill out there. They have coffee. They can rest their legs on another chair. They're fine. And then you can interrupt the person who is talking during a meeting. Interruptions are okay. Now, exchanging gift is a culture in Brazil. You can exchange gifts if you want to impress somebody, but do not buy expensive gifts, right? There is a difference. You buy teacher, say, a rose is fine, right? But you buy teacher an extremely expensive, say, cell phone, right? It happens in high society private schools. It happens. Now, that's considered as a bribe, right? And business attires are preferred. So that's about Brazil. China. Okay. We all know about China. China is like inevitable part of business world, right? A lot of times it happens that, like say in Toronto, if we go to a store, we buy something, 90% of the time, the case is we have bought home a Chinese product, right? So China is an inevitable part of your everyday life, right? And the rest 10% goods, not 10%, 8% goods would be, say, American manufactured, and 2% good might be Indian manufactured, right? So China is like an inevitable part of your daily life. And when it comes to business, China is China. Do not underestimate the importance of personal relationships. You have to build relationships with them. You should make a Chinese prospective business partner like you. If they don't like you, you cannot have business with them. Managers are directive. They will direct what you're supposed to. Again, structure. There is a fixed hierarchy, right? And in order to follow that hierarchy, they will have to instruct and direct their subordinates just to prove that they're superior and you are subordinate and you need to do what I'm saying. Avoid being too direct. Like in China, you cannot say no directly, right? Because that's somehow considered against Chinese traditions. They don't like people saying no directly. Now, this is a really, really unique part of Chinese culture. So whenever you are exchanging your business cards, right, do it in the beginning, and then you always use your 2 hands to hand over your business card, right? Because Chinese believe that you have to give respect to written documents, right? Similar to what we have in India. So when you give out your business card, try to use both of your hands and hand it to the person you're dealing with. Many meetings before progress. It's not like one meeting, what you say, I believe, what I say, you believe. But then what they do, they meet you multiple times until and unless they feel that, okay, you are the right person to do business with, then there will be progress. You cannot see progress in the first or second meeting. You have to meet subsequently in order to see some definite business progress. Giving gifts is a part of everyday business in China. Again, you can give out gifts, but try to avoid expensive gifts. Do not openly disagree with people. Being said no directly, so of course, you cannot disagree with people, avoid disagreeing. At the end, allow Chinese partner to leave first. I think that's basic etiquette. You always allow the person who you are dealing with to leave first, and then you leave. So that's about China. All right. We come to business culture in India. Now, when you're dealing with somebody in India, avoid touching someone's head, right? Because head is considered to be reverential. So internationally, when we talk about business cultures and we are talking about Indian culture, we always say that do not touch somebody's head, right? It's considered to be extremely reverential, like patting somebody's hair or ruffling somebody's hair. That's not considered a good sign. Now, calling someone out with index finger and palm up, it's considered an insult. Just imagine your palm is up and you're calling somebody with an index finger, right? How annoyed you would be. But that's fine in some other cultures, right? It's just a way to call you out. But in India, it's considered to be an insult, like pointing out finger to somebody and calling somebody. You can't even imagine. Then consider your posture, like when you're sitting, and imagine if you're sitting with crossed legs, right? I remember I was beaten up in school a lot of times, right? Um, just because we used to sit with crossed legs, or our legs would hit somebody else's chair in the front, right? So that's not a part of our culture. So we have to be mindful the way we sit in the class, because feet are considered unclean and you cannot point it out to somebody. That's what it is. Feet are not considered to be to be clean. Imagine if you're sitting in a meeting somewhere in US, you can actually put your legs on the desk and sit in the meeting and sip your coffee. That's fine, right? As long as you're not as long as you're not having something uh, something that intoxicates you, you're fine, right? Women and dressing, like sari is considered to be professional. Men usually wear jackets and ties, and revealing clothes are generally avoided. Women are not expected to wear revealing clothes at work. That's Indian culture. Then lunch meetings are prepared. Be careful, beef must be avoided, right? Um, Again, if you go out for a lunch with say Indians, and when we talk internationally about it, we usually people know about it. People know that cow is reverential, and you cannot offer somebody who is from an Indian background. So people around the world know about it. Avoid leather made goods, again for the same reason, right? Because animals are revered, they're respected, and you cannot offer leather goods or pure leather gifts to somebody who's from India. Avoid the word no to refuse an invitation. Use phrases like we'll see, I'll try, or maybe, right? This is something I know we use. This sounds like an Instagram meme, but this is the fact, right? This is how we dodge or avoid situations, especially our bosses, right? I used to get a lot from my bosses, like say, I deserve a raise. And he would say, we'll see next year. We'll see in June, right? Because June is when the new year starts. And that's it. Oh, we'll see. Anyway, smile is a yes, and nodding in the form of an 8, that's confusion. You you neither agree nor you disagree. So nodding is yes, and if you move your head like an 8, it's confused. I mean, so yes, you have to be careful with gesture. Like in Canada, youth especially, they nod their head in the form of an 8 to express, you can say, happiness, that they're like boom, they love it, right? But in India, if you say like this, you nod your head in the form of an 8, it's considered to be you don't like it or it's confusion. All right, business culture in Saudi Arabia. Now, We know Saudi Arabia is a different sort of a country, and everything, whatever they do, right? Whatever they do, it revolves around Islamic religion. For example, you have to give time for praying, you need to accommodate their fasting schedules, right? So everything, whatever they do, their business, their entire economy, right, revolves around religion, Islamic religion, because that's what their official religion is. Businesses are structured in a hierarchy. Again, they have a fixed hierarchy. And nepotism, they love, for them, hiring their own family members is what they like. Like, my business should be taken over by my son or my nephew or niece. Again, so nepotism is what they believe in. There's nothing wrong. They believe that their family business or their business should be run by their family members only. Most of the times, even bigger businesses, their entire family would be associated with their businesses, right? Because it's all about it's all about hiring your own people. Age is respected. If you're older than somebody, then you have to respect him or her. So just because they have a fixed hierarchy, right, a structure, what they do, managers have to give instructions. Now here, workers are not expected to take an initiative. If you are an employee, I don't want to use that word, but if you're an employee, you are an employee. You should be doing what you're expected to do. You cannot take initiatives. Making strong eye contacts shows trust, that you trust somebody. You trust them. Several meetings can occur. Now, this is a bit weird and funny because, like, there will be multiple meetings going on in the same room, right? And at the same time. This is something unique. Imagine there would be so much communication. There would be a lot of communication barriers. How can you talk to somebody when there is a different group in the same room talking? That's a bit weird, but then that's what their schedule, that's what their culture is about. Women play little or no role in the business. We all know, right? They don't involve women in businesses. They recently made driving legal. So imagine what is the status of women in that country. Meetings can be loud and appear aggressive, right? Now, they're aggressive. They would be shouting and yelling in the meeting. Now, that aggression is not a sign of anger, but that shows interest. They want to do business with you, and they're so excited. Like, if you look at Arabs at the airports, you might see that they're so loud when they meet somebody or when they see their family members receiving them at the airport. They're so loud. Why? Because they're just that way. They just love expressing themselves. Sometimes they're so loud to an extent you feel that, oh, he's about to hit his wife. But then, no, he just loves expressing himself. And yeah, that's how it is. Then time is flexible. Meetings can start late and may last hours. In North American culture, we usually say that starting a meeting late and ending it late, it's just that it's a sign of poor planning. But again, when we teach international business, we generally say that it's a part of their culture and nothing related to poor planning. Gestures are extremely important. The way you behave, the way you act, they do notice all those gestures. And dressed conservatively, you will be judged. They will judge you from your appearance. If you wear imagine, right? Imagine dressing up like Ranveer Singh in Saudi Arabia, right? You just cannot match two ideologies, right? Dressing up in fanciful colors, in different sort of clothes and going for a meeting in Saudi Arabia, they would think that you're a lunatic, right? So you got to dress conservatively because they would judge you from your appearance. The decision maker usually remains silent while the question is asked by a person of lesser importance. So if a subordinate is asking a question, the decision maker would say, stay silent. And then rather than answering the question, he would be giving out his decision. Again, structured hierarchy, and you're not supposed to take initiatives. Okay, now I'm going to leave it open for you to tell me what culture is this, right? I'm just going to play a video. Mr. Kishore, can you hear the audio? Okay. Which country I'm trying to relate to with this video? Can somebody tell me? Nobody?
It's America.
Yes, it's the US. Imagine Elon Musk dancing at an international event, right? Can you imagine director of a big Indian company dancing on the stage in an event in some other country? No, right? This is US. They have one of the finest corporate cultures, right? Their meetings, their working environment is extremely chilled out. Okay, except Amazon, because Amazon is like a completely different game, right? Okay, Amazon doesn't count, but they have an extremely relaxed business environment, and they focus more on the achievement of objectives rather than stuff leading towards the objectives. Their focus is objectives, and they believe in short-term achievements, right? We all know the difference between the US strategy, US management and Japanese management, right? How USA believes in specialization, right? And breaking up the job in tits and bits. So that's about US. All right. So that's about US. And I'm not going in deep about US because it's something really close to Canadian business culture. All right, business culture in Canada. Now, Canadians, something different from the Americans. Canadians are extremely polite and courteous. They tell you sorry, thank you repeatedly, right? For example, if you come for a meeting on time, they would say, thank you for coming on time. Thank you for making it up, right? So they would thank you and say sorry again and again. And they would use these courteous words like please, sorry, thank you repeatedly. And sometimes you might, to an extent that you might not even like it because we are not used to it. The Canadians, they love complaining about the weather. Imagine, like last week, it is October, right? It's October. So I was standing close to the reception of my school, and one of my colleagues walked in, and the distance from the parking lot to the reception would be just say 100 meters, and the weather was around 10 to 11 degrees, and she is like, oh my God, it is so cold. I'm like, you just literally walked 100 meters. You did not even feel how cold it is, right? So Canadians, they just love complaining about the weather. If you want to break the ice, start talking about weather and you can charm a Canadian easily. Just start talking about the weather. Okay, firm handshake in the first meeting, then meetings start right on time and end on a pre-decided time. You cannot just open-endedly invite somebody for a meeting, say at 4 o'clock. It has to be, the meeting will be from 4 to 4:30. It has to be on a pre-decided time. Agendas before the meeting is a must. If you invite somebody, like for example, if my principal invites us for a meeting, then he or she has to send out the agenda before the meeting. And what will be done at what time needs to be listed on the agenda so that everybody knows how the meeting is going to run. Everybody is respected, irrespective of age, gender, or color. Authority doesn't allow you to disrespect. So again, if you professors have to respect students, students have to respect the professors, and same goes with everybody, right? If you see a steward at a restaurant or if you see anybody, you have to give respect to everyone. You cannot be rude to anybody. That's the normal culture. You just don't find rude people. And if you see a rude person, then something is wrong. That's Canada. Eye contact is important when conducting business and should be held while speaking to someone. But be careful, do not stare. Again, just like a lot of developing cultures, in Canada, business is not personal. Business, there is a clear distinction between business and personal life. So while doing a business meeting, you cannot even ask personal questions, nor you can make an eye contact. I mean, you can make eye contact, but do not stare into somebody, because again, that's trespassing into personal space. And lack of direct eye contact signifies boredom and disinterest. So if you take away eyes from somebody while talking, or while somebody is talking, you take away your eyes, that means you're not interested, and the person talking to you might stop talking. That's extremely usual. Now, business conversations are usually casual, right? And again, this is really important. Yes means yes, and no. If somebody asks me, would you like to have coffee? If I say no, that's it, right? No is a no. If I say yes, it's a yes. If they're asking me, that means they're for sure asking it. If they're not asking, that means for sure they're not asking. So you got to be very careful. You cannot push somebody. You cannot push somebody to have something or not have something. And yes, you always stay at least half a meter apart when you're speaking to somebody, because it's not considered right to breathe into somebody's face, right? So you always stay at least a meter apart, just to avoid breathing in somebody's face. Do not ask about personal details. It's considered intrusion. Even at interviews, nobody asks you if you're married or if you have kids or if you're planning to get married, or if you want to go on a mat leave. All these questions are avoided, and you can politely say, sorry, I respectfully refuse to answer these questions. That's just about a culture. And again, on a business meeting, you cannot ask, how's your wife and kids, right? They would walk away. And again, gender is also important. You cannot assign a gender until and unless they tell you to assign one, right? You cannot address a man as he until and unless he addresses or he tells you specifically what to call him out. So gender roles, you cannot assign a gender to somebody until and unless they have specifically mentioned you, right? And on forms, or you can say while you're talking to somebody, you cannot ask their gender, right? It's completely up to them whether to answer that question or not. So that's about Canada. Sorry, I took a bit long for Canada because that's where I live. All right, now, this is really interesting. Culture's influence in workplace. If you want to measure how culture is influencing a certain workplace, right? So Greet Hofstede, an anthropologist, he has come up with 6 parameters to measure the influence of culture in a workplace, right? Let's see. What are these 6 parameters that he has given us? So one is PDI, Power Distance Index, then UAI, Uncertainty Avoidance Index, long-term versus short-term orientation, LTO, individualism versus collectivism, IDV, masculinity versus femininity, MAS, and indulgence versus restraint. So let's see, if you try to measure these 6 parameters, right, you can easily measure what is the influence of culture in this particular firm or in this particular economy, right? It can be at micro as well as macro level. The first one, Power Distance Index. Okay. Power Distance Index. Now, Power Distance Index, it measures the difference in power is perceived. As you know, we saw a lot of countries where there is a structured hierarchy, like Mexico, China, Japan, right? So they have a structured hierarchy, and they consider people, say, social status, gender, race, education, birth, wealth, personal achievements, family background as a power. So if you fall into the elite, then yes, you have power and you got to show power, right? So workers in high power cultures would need to be guided and directed because they have a fixed structure and organized structure, and they do consider the people higher in the organizational structure they consider themselves to be superior, and they do consider that they have power. So they are supposed to guide and instruct them. And again, the workers, they try to avoid taking initiatives because they love being told what they're supposed to do. Now, if you believe Hosted's research, then the power distance is extremely high in countries like Russia, Mexico, China, Indonesia, and India. And the power culture is low in countries like US, Canada, UK, Norway, and Sweden. The other countries that he has researched are considered to be average when it comes to power distance index. So now you need to keep in mind when you are doing business with any of these countries. So if you are researching it, you got to keep in mind where this country stands in terms of power distance, right? Let's say if you're doing business in Russia, so you have to respect somebody's social status, gender, race, age, education, and stuff like that. Okay, next is uncertainty avoidance index. Now, change, right? When we learn management, we are taught that change is something extremely difficult, and sometimes change might lead to conflict, right? So how various countries try and adapt themselves to change, that's about uncertainty avoidance index, right? UAI. Now, uncertainty, countries that attempt to avoid uncertainty, they have formal rules, rituals, and strong religious convictions, right? So they have their own strategies, and they believe in formal rules, established policies and structures, and they follow that step by step, and that's how it works. High UAI means high value on conformity. Conformity means what? They will follow the rules as it is. They will conform to the rules, and little tolerance to outsiders because they think that outsiders are not trustworthy. And low UAI means they're risk-taking, they're less rule-oriented, and they're tolerant towards outsiders and their opinions. So if you go to a country that with low UAI, it's easier to do business with them. So technically, in terms of UAI, it's easier to do business in UK, China, Sweden, and Denmark compared to Russia, Japan, South Korea, Mexico, and Colombia. Again, Norway, Canada, US, and India fall in the category of average. So that's about uncertainty avoidance index. Next is long-term versus short-term orientation. Now again, some cultures have long-term orientations, right? And some cultures believe in short-term. They are short-term oriented. Now with long-term orientation, countries with long-term or cultures with long-term orientation, they value thrift and perseverance to achieve long-term goals. So you know what thrift is. Like in my opinion, if you ask me, it's just a money saving strategy when it comes to being thrifty, right? Bosses always want to save money so that they can increase their own profits. That's what I believe, right? And whenever it comes to payments, just on a lighter side, they think salaries are the first expense they can ever cut down, right? Always, right? Always. So again, anyway. So, and perseverance to achieve long-term goals. Now, sometimes their long-term goals are so remote that nobody from the present generation is going to see the achievement of those long-term goals. It's only the distant future generations that will see the achievement of their long-term goals, right? So they are so distant and remote or extremely future-oriented that it is going to be visible only to the future generations and nobody from the present generation. Now, what happens in the cultures with short-term orientation? They hold that now is more important than then, right? So they don't believe in then, they believe in now. Let's do it. Just like the American culture or North American culture. Business with short-term orientation may inadvertently offend businesses in the long-term orientation. Just in a layman's language, businesses with long-term orientation, they believe that short-term businesses are useless. And they have a strong belief that they will fail in near future. Even if they are doing extremely well now, they're bound to fail in future. That's what they believe, right? Knowingly or unknowingly. Longer business negotiations versus immediate results and faster negotiation process. Now, if you can identify that a certain company in a certain culture, is it long-term oriented or short-term oriented? So you can actually know what your future is going to look like. Why? If it is long-term oriented, that means you will have to do multiple meetings, right? And it might take years by the time you strike a deal. But if it is short term, things would be faster. You get faster responses and the progress of your business would be faster, right? You would be able to strike a deal faster if it is short-term oriented. Again, looking at the facts, South Korea, Japan, China, Russia, they have a super high score. That means they're extremely long-term oriented. Whereas Sweden, UK, India, Greece are average, neither too long nor too short. Whereas Canada, Norway, US, Mexico, and Colombia, they are short-term oriented and they believe in what to do now rather than foreseeing the future. The next strategy you can use is individualism versus collectivism. Okay. Now, this is relating to, you can say, your freedom of choice, right? So the dimension this dimension refers to the extent to which people are expected to make their own decisions. Now, countries wherein people can make, or cultures where people can make their own decisions in terms of education, job, and life partner, right? Those are considered to be ranked higher on IDV index. Why? Because you have more freedom. You can take your own decisions in terms of education, job, and life partner. Then highly individualistic cultures encourage each citizen to make personal choices and stand up for him or herself. Like if you see, right, more the freedom, higher is the rank. So countries like, zoom window sometimes. So US, Australia, UK, Canada, Sweden, and Norway, they're ranked high on this index, IDV index. That means people here have more freedom of choice, right? They can take their own decisions in terms of education, job, and life partner, right? Like arranged marriage. Imagine if I tell my colleagues that I had an arranged marriage, they almost faint, and they say that do parents actually fix a meeting between a boy and a girl? I mean, they just can't imagine, right? But it's such a common thing in countries that score low on the Hofstede's IDV score. Collectivist culture value the greater good, and many of their members have their future prescribed by the government, church, or family. Like church here necessarily doesn't mean a church literally. Church here, Hofstede, means that a religious body, right? So in collectivist culture, usually people are supposed to make choice depending on what it could lead to in terms of greater good, and their decisions are prescribed usually by the government, church, or family, if not directly, indirectly, right? Imagine somebody from not so good financial background, can he study at an expensive institution? No, right? Why? Because somehow indirectly it has been controlled by the social status. So on IDV score, that country would fall at a lower score. Whereas in a country where everything is, you can say, sponsored by the government, starting from schooling to the university, right? A person has a greater advantage of making a choice, right? So those countries, if you take an example of Canada, education is free. If you go to university, government gives you loans to study, right? So again, you have a greater flexibility in deciding. Okay. Next we have is masculinity versus femininity. Now, Greet, he uses masculinity to refer to the degree to which culture values assertiveness, competitiveness, ambition, accumulation of money and wealth. So basically, he's talking about gender roles. He says that in some cultures, these traits like assertiveness, competitiveness, ambition, accumulation of money and wealth, these are the traits that usually fall in a man's, you can say, in a man's kitty. A man is supposed to do that, right? Whereas a female's responsibility is that she is supposed to nurture the family relationships and has to behave like a social support system, right? So it depends. Now, some cultures, they score extremely high, right? They score extremely high on this index, on mass index. So if you see, if you see countries like Japan, Hungary, and Austria, so they score really high. That means in these countries, gender roles are clearly and distinctly defined, right? A man is supposed to do what he's supposed to do. A woman is supposed to do what he's supposed to do. And other countries like Mexico, China, UK, Colombia, US, India, Canada, they're average. There are gender role differences, but not as distinct as Japan, Hungary, and Austria. Whereas in countries like South Korea, Russia, Finland, Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, there are no fixed gender roles, right? All genders can do whatever they want. Okay. Next we have is indulgence versus restraint. This is my favorite. Now this because this is about enjoyment of life and having fun. So technically it's about happiness, right? So indulgence refers to the extent to which people across different cultures control their desires or impulses. So if you are a fun-loving person or you're always restrained, it depends on culture, right? Imagine going to bars and having a few beers with your colleagues after work. Is such type of indulgence common in a country like India or China? Maybe no, right? But it's extremely common in Canada, as you can see on the score, right? Or maybe in the US. Usually on Fridays, right? It's the colleagues' day out. Usually, most of the Fridays, at least twice a month. And what people do, you can judge easily. So that's about indulgence. So people do not necessarily have to control their desire to have fun, right? Whereas in restrained cultures that score extremely low on the score, they have restraint, they have restrictions, right? Placed by the society. Now, imagine, this is again against my personal rules. Imagine a society establishing a restraint, right, on what you want to do. So, okay, let's not get into details. So countries that have high restraint, usually their desires are controlled by the society. Weak control is indulgence and strong control is restraint. So if society's control is weak, you are allowed to do what you want to do, then that's indulgence. And if the control is strong, then that's restraint. All right, so that was from my side. Now let's open the platform for questions. If you have any questions, if you want to speak to me about something, all yours. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mustafa Kubbawala. Many thanks for your work and the brilliant presentation. I would now request Mr. Ranjit Prakash, Assistant Professor, Metas Adventist College, to take over the question and answer session.
Thank you, ma'am. Well, we all had an interesting and informative session. Now, I'd like to thank Mustafa sir for enlightening us on the topic culture in international business. Sir, before getting into the question round, we have a lot of comments from the participants. I'd like to just read out. Some of them have given a lovely comments stating it was awesome information, excellent information, a very informative session in regarding this international business culture. And to put in one word, it was really flabbergasted performance, sir. Whatever you have spoken, they have been highly enriched by this. So we have a couple of questions. So would you like to address them, sir?
Sure, please go ahead.
Sir, first we have Tushara Tota from Metas Adventist College, a third year student. Tushara can ask the question.
Good evening, sir. I'm Tushara Tota from Metas Adventist College. My question is, in what direction do you think globalization processes should follow in the future in terms of culture to make it easy and smooth to adopt it for all?
Thank you for asking that question. In my opinion, I think even we are globalized, right? But then everybody still has a culture. Now, if you are doing, it is always considered to be, you can say, flattering, right? For example, if you're dealing with somebody in Mexico, you should study about Mexican culture. Even if we talk about, say, we are a globalized economy everybody should follow the same strategies, the same style. But I don't think that's correct, because everybody has a culture, and it's always, you can say, courteous to learn and adapt somebody else's culture and then behave in a way he or she would expect us to behave. And that works like a charm in businesses. So even if we are a globalized economy, you should study cultures of countries where you're doing business. So that works like a charm. I hope that answered
Thank you
your
so
question.
much, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Good evening to all the respected teachers and Mr. Mustafa. I am Palak Singhvi, and myself, I would like to ask that as a student, when we want to immigrate to other countries for our further education, so what opinions do you think that we can change in terms of cultural change?
Can you ask your question again?
Yes, sir. As a student, when we want to like to immigrate to other countries for our further education, what things we should take in terms, what things we must take care in terms of cultural change?
I think firstly, like, especially when we come from a very restrictive, restrained culture to an indulging culture, it is overwhelming, right? A lot of times, students, like international students, especially who are between, let's say between age of 19 and 23, right? They are usually so overwhelmed, right? Instead of studying, they start partying, going out daily. Like imagine in Canada, cannabis is legal, right? So a lot of my like past students, I have them on my social media, and what I see is their indulgence towards cannabis a lot more than they're expected to, right? So a lot of times they are overwhelmed because from a restrained culture, they're moving from indulgence. So you have to be strong enough, and you should not be, taken away or carried away by the fancy things that happen in the Western culture. Because again, what happens is, I don't want to pass any racist comments here, but then again, the natives are way more successful than the people of color, right? So if you are indulged into all these things, then you are deviated from your objectives, right? I mean, doing it once a week or maybe once a month is fine, but then you have to be careful that you are not overwhelmed by the indulgence that you see in the Western countries, because they're okay. So I hope you understand, right? I don't want to go in detail.
Good evening, sir. I am Swati Nambiar, a student of Metas Adventist College. I would like to ask you a question that how has technological upgradation helped in studying the culture of current international business from that of past?
Technology, oh, no, technology works like a charm. Imagine, could you do something like this 100 years ago, right? Would you be able to see me, right? That's completely impossible. Imagine, a lot of times it happened me as a kid. If it rained so heavily, I used to go to school and somebody at the gate would tell me, there is no school today, please go home, right? So imagine that this was not even possible in the same city. Now, because of technological advancement, what has happened is cultures of the world are at your fingertips, right? You have YouTube videos. Imagine you watch a Netflix show, right? That is shot in the UK. So you know a lot about their culture. You learn so many phrases, or you watch a Canadian show before coming to Canada. So technology plays a vast role, and it has made access to information very, very easy. Now, I always tell my students, you don't necessarily need a teacher in your classroom, right? You have your Google, right? You ask Google everything. But then why do you need a teacher? Why do you still need a teacher? Why can't you do everything using your Google? Because a teacher helps you to improve your thinking and apply what information you seek from Google, right? So technology has helped a lot in making information accessible. But again, you have to be very careful in terms of how you let it churn your thinking process, because that should not be diverged again with a lot of information. Because even if just having a million facts in your mind doesn't necessarily make you intelligent, right? You telling me 5 statistics every day doesn't necessarily mean that you are smarter than your teacher. So
Thank you so much, sir. It's been a pleasure attending your lecture.
thank you. Same here.
Good evening, sir. I Ayush Soni, a student of third year from Metas is asking, sir, what are your opinion on compromising your own cultures and adopting someone else's culture for your profitable?
Okay. Okay, Ayush, thank you. That's a brilliant question. So I think money is the key, right? Um, believe just faking a culture and adapting and believing a culture are two different things, right? If I have to fake myself, right, just for a little bit, and that is going to be profitable, a lot more profitable in future, then why not, right? Um, so I think it's not about letting your culture go. Like imagine right now, I'm talking to you. It's an international conference. Can you believe I am sitting on the floor? Can you believe that? Right? I'm sitting on the floor. Have I let my culture go? Can you see? There are cushions. At my place. You can see I'm sitting on an Indian sitting. So have I let my culture go? No, right? But then it's okay sometimes to be a Roman when you are in Rome. But then that doesn't necessarily, I don't believe in letting your culture go. So you have to maintain your culture along with adapting to the new culture. Otherwise, you will lose that. You will lose your background. You should be proud of your background. I honestly believe that. But again, having said that, a lot of people they forego their culture entirely in order to Americanize or Canadianize themselves, which is not the right thing to do. Next question, please.
Good evening, sir. My name is Varsha Mandal. I'm from Metas College. So my question is, can you please guide us with some tips to strike balance between the culture we personally follow and the culture we had to adapt due to the professionalisms? And because it many times it becomes difficult to compromise with professional cultures due to the dominance of personal beliefs and values.
Varsha, that's an amazing question. Um, so, um, okay. So a lot of times it happens, right? Because money is the key. You have to earn. And if you don't adapt to the professional culture or culture of the place where you're working, sometimes it might not work to your advantage, right? Um, so yes, you have to sometimes compromise, but not always. You have to strike a balance. That's for sure, right? You have to strike a balance because if you keep compromising, if you keep compromising, they will keep abusing you, right? So there should be a balance. And if your company is always, you can say, um, always try to accommodate your needs, then you should also try to accommodate their needs. But if they don't accommodate, then you should also not accommodate. So it depends on the type of firm and company you're working with. It works both ways. If they don't care for you, you don't care for them. If they care for you, then you do care for them. You can also miss one religious ceremony in a year, right? Just because it's important to be at work on a certain day. So that's fine. But if they always want you at the cost of your own culture, then you should give a second thought, because in future they might throw you out whenever they want to, because they don't care for their employees.
Thank you, sir.
I hope that answered your question. Do we have more questions?
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mustafa, sir, and all the respected dignitaries. Myself, Ashika Chopra. I am in third year BBA. I acknowledge everything you have explained us about global culture, sir, but I have a question. How global e-commerce websites take care of cultural diversity during their business strategies?
Can you ask your question again?
Sure, sir. How global e-commerce websites take care of culture diversity during their business strategy?
You mean to say how these e-commerce website create an impact on the culture? Is that what your question is?
Yes, sir.
Usually, when you study digital marketing, right? It is often about adapting to somebody else's culture, right? If they sometimes, yes, because Western culture, as you see, it's more about indulgence, right? So the youth find it extremely attractive. So what happens is they try to trick you because, of course, money is the key, right? They want to earn a lot of money. And in India, you know, the herd mentality, youth, they always go in a certain direction at once, right? I was, imagine, it was in the Canadian news, Sushant Singh Rajput's, oh my God, suicide. It made international headlines because it was everyday conversation in India for months, not because he died, just because it was what was happening after his death in India. That made international news, right? So it's because of the herd mentality that happens in India. The e-commerce website tries to use that as a strategy, right? As a soft strategy, because they know that indulgence is lacking in countries like India and a huge population. So they would try to target it. Cell phone addiction, right? I thought Canadian students would be more addicted to their cell phones than India. But the situation is completely reverse. They don't even use their cell phones throughout the day. They have it during their lunch. But imagine me teaching in college. Oh my God, cell phone was a big problem. We had so many evidences, like cheating evidences during exams and stuff like that. That was a big pain in India. So again, it depends. It depends actually. So restraint leads to extreme indulgence. And e-commerce websites, they use it as a soft target. And yes, AI has now taken over. Imagine you just look for a bike, and your Facebook, your Instagram, it would all be filled up, or it will all be filled up with bike advertisements. So AI plays a major role rather than the e-commerce websites. They rely heavily on AI.
Thank you, sir.
No problem.
It's time for open questions. I would like to inform all the dignitaries in the Zoom to kindly ask questions. And before, if you permit, then I'll take some of the questions of YouTube, sir. So first
Yes,
question
sure.
is, yes, sir. What is the difference between Western and Eastern culture, especially regards to Asia?
I'm sorry, I just got cut off, especially in regards to,
Asia,
I mean, what is the difference between Indian and, I mean, Western and
Western,
Eastern culture?
special regards to Asia.
Okay. Now, when I say Asia, Asia is countries like Japan, China, right? And Korea. These are Asian countries. Now, it's a way, Western culture and Eastern culture is a bit different because, especially in Japan, they have a holistic approach. They believe in different management strategies like TQM and stuff like that. Whereas in, in the US and Canada, we believe in division of labor and time specific activities, right? I'll just give you an example. So for example, in Canada, we have drive-through restaurants extremely popular. So you place an order while you're sitting in your car, and by the time you reach the first window, so there will be an automated machine, you just talk to them, you place an order, let's say, for example, you want a coffee and a muffin. So you say that, you drive, like say 20 meters on the first window, you pay using your card, right? And then what happens? You go to the second window, you grab your food. And this entire process takes not more than 60 seconds, this entire process, right? Now, why is this happening? Because they have split the task into small tits and bits. A person who is filling the coffee is just filling the coffee. A person who is heating the muffin is just heating the muffin. So what happens? They are extremely specialized in what they are doing, which is completely against to what happens in the Asian countries, right? They believe in holistic approach and they do the entire job by themselves. So this is one of the major differences I see. And then again, in the Western culture, the titles, right? The titles, like imagine, Ayush asked me a question here and I said, Mustafa, sir. I can't imagine my students calling me Mustafa, sir. It's like, hey, Mustafa, how are you doing this morning? Right? It's like that. So that's also one of the difference in culture. Imagine my first day of work and my student walks in. I'm sitting on the chair at my desk and he comes, hey, Mustafa, good to see you. And I'm like, what the hell? Did he just say that? And then I realized that this is how it works. This is what the culture is, right? But then, yeah, that's the difference. And again, respect. You don't respect age here. I have to respect my students. I cannot pass any absurd comment in class, right? I cannot tell him, oh, what an ugly shirt you're wearing. I cannot say that, right? I don't like your outfit. Oh my God, I would be fired right away. So you have to respect. And again, you will receive that respect.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So next question. What is the role of cultural diversity in international business?
Um, Cultural diversity plays a very important role. Like imagine, I don't know if you guys are aware about the Tesco case, like the company that makes Pringles. You all are aware about Pringles, right? So in the holy month of Ramadan in UK, they launched a bacon flavored Pringles. Imagine, in the month of Ramadan, and Muslims, they don't eat bacon, right? So that was such a big marketing blunder. So you have to study everybody's culture before you launch anything, right? And in the UK, there are so many, there's a huge population that follows Islam. So you cannot just do whatever you want. It would be a disaster. Imagine the launch of Domino's in India, right? Everybody assumed that they sold beef and the Domino's had to close down and they had to relaunch, right? So you have to study culture. The Maharaja Mac that we eat at McDonald's in India, there is no Maharaja Mac here, right? The cheese burst pizza that I used to enjoy every weekend in India, there is no cheese burst pizza at Domino's. So culture plays a big time role if you want to be successful. You cannot just sell what you're selling in the US, in India, or maybe in Saudi Arabia or China. You have to adapt to their cultures. Imagine a burger in India is 100 rupees. That's $2. In $2, you don't even get a large coffee here. Right? So, again, that means in terms of pricing, in terms of product specification, and in terms of values, you have to be particular. You cannot just sell the same thing, be it in terms of pricing, be it in terms of the product, or be it in terms of value. You have to take care of all the three parameters.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Another question. What is the role of fine arts in business culture of Canada?
Fine arts is extremely popular here. People have huge inclination towards art, paintings, and like road arts, right? So yes, fine art is an integral part of Canadian culture because finance and math is not essentially the strongest part, or you can say point of every individual in Canada. They rely heavily on art, and yes, art has a major role. And again, there are so many live shows that happens depicting various arts. Like there is a, like I have been to a couple of Chinese art nights. They're amazing, right? There are so many Indian musicians who come and and have their concerts here. So yes, it plays. Because I said earlier in my presentation, right? Canada is a mosaic, a group of different tiles of various cultures, and then it forms a Canadian culture. So yes, art forms of various countries play a very important role. Again, you have to keep people from different backgrounds entertained, right? So art is a must.
Thank
Are
you.
those all the questions?
Thank you so much, sir, for answering the questions. Given to Surbhi ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Ranjit Prakash. Thank you, Mr. Mustafa Kubbawala. Those were excellent and interesting answers. And couldn't have been more diverse. Thank you is the best prayer that anyone could say. Now, I would like to request Mr. Franklin Narayan, Assistant Professor, Metas Adventist College, for a vote of thanks.
As we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them. Good evening, everyone. I am Franklin Narayan, Assistant Professor, Metas Adventist College. Firstly, I would like to thank our Almighty God for making today's webinar a grand success. It's my honor to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks on this auspicious occasion of this international webinar. I, on behalf of Meta Adventist College and the entire organizing team, would sincerely thank Mr. Mustafa for wisdom on the topic culture in international business. I would like to express our profound gratitude to our inspirational president and CEO, Dr. Srika Kolielia sir, for mentoring and leading us to this stage of excellence. The wheels started rolling weeks ago. It required planning and a bird's eye view for every minute detail, for which we are fortunate enough to be backed by our motivational HOD, Dr. Anil Kumar CH, for his never-ending support and commitment. No program can become successful with a single person. So I extend my wholehearted thanks to all my colleagues, delegates, students, well-wishers, and volunteers who have participated overwhelmingly by synchronizing tasks with exemplary, untainted hard work towards the grand success of this international webinar. Big thanks to our distinguished speaker, Mr. Mustafa Kubbawala, for his excellent presentation and making this webinar interesting and enlightening. Finally, the wonderful participants who have turned up in such great numbers, not only from our college, but from other colleges. Once again, I want to state that we all are most grateful to the speaker of the hour, Mr. Mustafa Kubbawala, for being with us this evening. It's been a great pleasure, sir. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you. I
Thank
would
you,
also like to
Franklin
thank
Narayan.
all the
Yeah.
teachers who
Yes,
taught me
sir.
at school and for being here. I'm so delighted to have you. I cannot imagine Shyam Prasad sir, Miss Lohita, Naveen sir. I mean, I'm just overwhelmed. And again, as we're talking about culture, what we learned at Metas as a student in school reflects a lot in terms of American culture. Like imagine, like I used to be very active in terms of say marathon reading. Now, when I do marathon reading at my place, I mean at my place of work, that is it's so popular. People just love it, and that's what I learned at Metas. So, and this is my this is what I want to say to students, that what you're doing right, what choice you have made a right choice. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mustafa Kubbawala. Thank you, all the participants. Now, we need to make some important announcements. Please do fill the feedback form, which is available in the chat box of Zoom. It is also available in YouTube comment section. Participants registered and filling the feedback form will be receiving certificates in the next 4 working days. Thank you very much for joining us today and hope to see you all in our next lineup webinars. Thank you so much.